Oh, hello, everybody, and welcome to an M19 Time Capsule Top 5. If you didn't see my Time Capsule Top 5 I did for Dominaria, essentially what this is I go back through my set review and just look at the top 5s that I had. So, and then see how wrong or how right I was. So, it's just a really fun way to look back at where I was at the beginning of the format and where I am now after many drafts of the format. So, it's just kind of something that I enjoy doing, and it's just a fun thing to do as a way to look back before the new set comes out, because I was gearing up for my set review for Guilds of Ravnica. So without further ado, if you enjoy the video, be sure to click that thumbs up and subscribe to get updates when I post my set review and other content. But without further ado, let's get into it. First of all, I'm going to start off with the white cards. My first top 5 commons, first time around, were at number 1 I had Luminous Bonds, number 2 I had Take Vengeance, 3 Angel of Dawn, Pegasus Courser number 4, and Starkine Stag number 5. The only real change that I had over the thing was oops, wrong one. I moved I'd Take Vengeance to number 5. So basically, Angel of the Dawn just proved to be a super strong card in the format. Whenever someone cast this against me on turn 5, I was always getting wrecked, and when I cast it on turn 5, they were getting wrecked. It was just such a powerful card, and Take Vengeance really just wasn't that good. One of the it was a fine removal spell. I still have it at number 5. There was a lot of cards that in the right deck I would take Vengeance over. Like many times I would take Inspired Charge over Take Vengeance, and then many times I would take like a Trusty Pack Beast even over Take Vengeance if I had some artifact creatures. But I still think Take Vengeance is a good card. I know a lot of people thought it was like really bad by the end of the format, but I still thought it was a fine card, so I was still pretty happy to play it. So I had that at number 5. Number 3 was Pegasus Courser, just great card. That and Starkine Stag were both very good cards, but I think Pegasus Courser was a little bit better because flying was pretty good in this format. But that was my review for white. Pretty similar overall. I mean, not all the colors are going to be as similar, but yeah. Let's get into blue now. My number 1 I had Dwindle, just because whenever blue gets a removal spell, it's pretty hard not to rank that at number 1. And number 2 I had Essence Scatter, because Essence Scatter was really good when it was in Amaket. And it's just really versatile, really flexible card. You can cast it anytime on the curve. Then I had Aviation Pioneer. Just 2 bodies for 1 is really good, and one of them being an artifact for any minor sub-themes. Another thing I was keeping in mind during the set review was cards that make 2 bodies for 1 card. And the only 3 cards that did that at the common level were Gallant Cavalry, Aviation Pioneer, and Goblin Instigator. So I was considering all those cards, and it ended up white was so strong that I didn't give Gallant Cavalry a top 5 spot in either of my rankings, but it was definitely a card to keep in mind for that sole reason for like inspired charge decks. But I thought Aviation Pioneer was going to be great. Aven Windmage is another card. I mean, just the 3 at this point, those top 3 were really good, and then blue kind of fell off for me. But I had Aven Windmage at number 4 just because flyers are pretty relevant sometimes, and you never knew if the instant or sorcery deck was going to be great. And then Omen Speaker at number 5, just a solid guy. What I ended up switching up was when I first did the set review, I have the top 3, pretty much the exact same. Essence Scatter ended up being incredible in this format, in my opinion. I think this is one of the best Essence Scatter formats in all of Essence Scatter's time. So Essence Scatter was really good in this format. So I had that above Dwindle by the end of the format. I definitely got people a lot with Essence Scatter, and I got by Essence Scatter a lot. So I think Essence Scatter was number 1. But then Dwindle, Aviation Pioneer. But then after that, Salvager of Secrets really moved up a little bit for me. It was just a really annoying card because the control deck would play it and they just get a 2 for 1, and it was just one of their ways of grinding you out, because a lot of the time they'd get a removal spell back. It was especially good in blue-black decks because they'd get back a Lich's Caress, gain back even more life. So I replaced Aven Windmage with Salvager of Secrets because that card was just pretty good, and it was definitely a card that you wanted access to in your control decks. But then Omen Speaker at number 5 still. But yeah, let's go on to black. Black changed up a little bit, but basically I started off with the 2 removal spells at number 1 and 2. Then Skymarch Bloodletter was excellent in Ixalan. Let me pull up the picture for people that might not remember what that card does. It was excellent in Ixalan. I figured it was going to be excellent here, and it still was good. Skeleton Archer. I really valued the ping ability because when the set first comes out, you can get people a lot of the time with dealing 1 extra damage. It can help you trade up in combat. It can just kill Layer 1 toughness creatures. And then number 5, I was really struggling with when I was doing this. I was like, wow, there's not really a good candidate. At least at the time, I didn't think there was. And so I just picked Doom Dissenter. It was just a solid card. 1/1 that can turn into a 2/2. Enable some sacrifice synergy. So I had Doom Dissenter at number 5, but I wasn't really confident in it. When I switched things up, I had Lich's Caress number 1, Straggling Spores number 2, Skymarch Bloodletter number 3, And a card that really changed for me, I'm just going to pull up the picture, it was Vampire Neonate. That card I started off thinking it was unplayable and horrible, but it turned out to be really relevant. A lot of the life gain synergies really liked the repeatable life gain effect, like Epicure of Blood. Vampire Neonate ended up being a really solid way to grind out the opponent, so you'd be in a board stall and you'd just be killing them and put the pressure on them to act first. So Vampire Neonate was really good for me. I came around on it pretty quickly, I think, compared to most people, but because the 2 mana initially looks like really steep and the 0-3 is not a great body, but I think this card ended up being quite good. And then number 5, I was choosing between Abnormal Endurance and Macabre Waltz. Still not sure which one's better, but I think that Macabre Waltz ended up being a little bit better than Abnormal Endurance. The Macabre Waltz, I just remember whenever my opponent would cast this card against me in the middle to late stage of the game, I'd just be like, ugh, and like groan. Like, you play a card and you discard a card, so it's not technically giving you card advantage, but it's just giving you that they get rid of their land and they get back 2 creatures, especially if it was like a really good creature that you just killed. So Macabre Waltz was just one of those cards that I thought ended up being a lot better than I thought it was going to be at first. When you had a black deck that wanted to grind, you really wanted a Macabre Waltz, and that was a card that had an effect that you really needed. But yeah, going into red, I'm pretty proud of my red rankings because I think I was one of the people that was pretty high on Goblin Instigator from the start. Number 1 was Shock, number 2 Electrify, because I didn't know how the removal would work out, and Shock ended up being really good last time it was in the format. Like, I guess Shock isn't the same as Magma Spray, but Magma Spray was really good. Magma Spray and Electrify were in the same format together, and Magma Spray was a lot better. So I ended up going with the Shock over the Electrify to start with, and then at number 3, I was like looking through the red commons, and I saw Goblin Instigator, and this was one of my first aha moments for the fact that there'd be a red-white go-wide deck, because I knew Inspired Charge was in the format, so I was just looking for cheap ways to make 2 creatures, and Goblin Instigator is the only card that makes 2 creatures for 1 card that costs less than, like, that's in like red-white, which is the color of go-wide, which you can kind of tell because those are the aggressive colors. So I just kind of was looking at the cards, and I was like, Goblin Instigator seems like it's going to be good, and I stand by that. I think this card ended up being really solid in the format. Even control decks wanted it to combat the aggro deck, so it just ended up being really good. Number 4, I at this point I was kind of gambling a little bit. I wasn't sure if Vioshino Pyromancer would be great, but I figured if aggressive red decks were going to be really good, a Vioshino Pyromancer might be really good. And then number 5, I had Boggart Brute, because that card was just really solid when it was in Magic Origins. The list did change a little bit. I switched Electrify to number 1 and Shock to number 2. I think a lot of it is context dependent for your deck, but I think I'd first pick Electrify over Shock for a lot of the time, because then if you don't end up in a controlling deck, then it'll be better for you. I mean, if you don't end up in an all-out aggro deck, it's going to end up being a little bit better. Then I had 2 Shock, 3 Instigator. Boggart Brute ended up being really annoying in this format. Like, when your opponent played a Boggart Brute after, like, they go 2-drop into Boggart Brute, and if you missed your 2-drop in that game, you were just going to lose that game, because Boggart Brute was going to hit you for like 9 damage. It was just a really good card and a really powerful one. And then number 5, I put Havoc Devils because I thought this card just did good work. It could trample in for some damage. 4 power was pretty good. It got through most things. Even a lot of the 5-drops had 4 toughness. So I thought that Havoc Devils ended up being pretty solid, especially with combat tricks. Another card I considered for this spot was Goblin Motivator, because that card ended up being a lot better than I thought it was going to be at first. Goblin Motivator is the one that gives haste to a creature. But the reason I didn't put the Goblin Motivator there was because unless you were in like red-white specifically, you didn't really want to play Motivator as much. So I ended up just keeping the Havoc Devils at number 5. Next up we have green. Green was pretty easy. Rabid Bite and Druid of the Cowl were just miles ahead of everything in this one. Druid of the Cowl being the 1/3 that taps for mana, and Rabid Bite being a green removal spell that's pretty strong because it doesn't fight the creatures, it just punches the creatures and they just get dealt the damage. So Rabid Bite and Druid of the Cowl were definitely top 2. It ended up being like pretty context dependent which one you would take first in the format. I had Elvish Rejuvenator at number 3 to start with because I thought the green was going to be much like a very ramp heavy color, and Elvish Rejuvenator could fix for your colors, and I thought we were going to be splashing because of the tap lands. But I ended up being much lower on Elvish Rejuvenator by the end of the format. It could whiff. There was like a decent fail rate on Elvish Rejuvenator, and when it whiffed, you lost the game on the spot pretty much. And even when it hit, sometimes it still wasn't even that great. Then number 4, Centaur Courser, just because people undervalue 3-mana 3/3s. In a lot of formats, that body is just really good. 3-mana 3/3, no text, is just a good body. So I thought people would undervalue it, and I thought it was pretty decent. And then Colossal Dreadmon, just a nice finisher. The classic green trample finisher. I just really like Colossal Dreadmon, I think it's great. My new ratings, I had same top 2. Daggerback Basilisk was a card that went up a lot for me. I initially like kind of didn't. I like was thinking about it when I was doing my top 5, but I just didn't think it was going to be as good, just because if you're on the defensive, it trades down sometimes, but it also trades up a lot of the time. It's just kind of hard to evaluate like a 3-mana Death Touch creature, but it ended up being really good with Rabid Bite. It ended up being really good with Declare Dominance too. That was kind of a sick combo you could pull off. Number 4, I put Bristling Boar. Bristling Boar just ended up being really annoying. A lot of the decks would want to have like they would have like an Omen Speaker on the battlefield and then an Aviation Pioneer or something, and they just wouldn't be able to deal with Bristling Boar. One funny combo that people always pulled off was Bristling Boar, and they'd put Declare Dominance on it, and then you could only block it with one creature, so it kind of defeated the purpose, which was kind of funny. But I saw that happen to someone else, and then it happened to me once, which was just kind of funny. But and then number 5, I had Colossal Dreadnought because it was still just the de facto finisher for green. And then for the multicolored cards, there's not a ton of them. I initially had Tap Dual Lands as the number 1. I thought it was going to be a format where you could splash a ton. Skyscanner at number 2, just because that card's really solid. And then and then I had Manolith at number 3 because I thought that you were going to be splashing a lot more than you were, thanks to the dual lands. It just ended up being that you didn't want to splash a ton because a lot of the best cards for splashing would be 2 colors. Like you would splash white sometimes for Luminous Bonds, but you would never really splash black because all you really wanted from black was Lich's Caress, and Strangling Spores wasn't really worth splashing. So you use these a lot more in sealed, but I think in draft the tap dual lands weren't insane. They were fine. So I ended up changing it. Skyscanner I thought at number 1. This card was just great. I would like first pick this card out of some packs. It was just very solid. Good in any deck. It was especially good with like Skilled Animators, Scholar of Stars, any artifact synergy card. Loved Skyscanner. Number 2, I put Explosive Apparatus. This was just a solid removal spell. Like one of the things that I loved having in my artifact decks was cheap artifacts, because then if I had Skilled Animators, it could turn the Skilled Animator on turn 3 and hit them immediately for 5. So that was one of the things I really prioritized, and this is one of the cheaper artifacts. And dealing 2, sometimes I would just side these in because my opponent would have a 2/1 that was just like destroying me, like Mystic Archaeologist or whatever that card was called, the 2/1 that could draw 2 cards for 5 mana. Explosive Apparatus was just really good at shutting stuff like that down out of the sideboard. It was just a nice card. And then number 3, I feel like I could have put Marauder's Axe or Gearsmith Guardian here, but this is just one last hurrah to the Field Creeper. I had a lot of good moments with Field Creeper. There was I think the reason I like Field Creeper was when you'd have a Trusty Pack Beast deck, you would play Field Creeper on turn 2, then you'd trade it off, and then you'd play Trusty Pack Beast and feel like you were just the greatest player of all time. Also, it was good with Skilled Animator. You could turn this into a 5/5. I literally won a game where my only 2 cards in my opening hand, I like mulled the 6, and I had Field Creeper, Skilled Animator, and I won a game off that. So Field Creeper being a 2-mana artifact that was not horrible was pretty nice. I think Marauder's Axe was also fine, and Gearsmith Guardian was good if you were a blue deck, but I think Field Creeper wins the 3rd place spot because it hasn't had an impact on my heart. So yeah, that is going to do it for the M19 Time Capsule Top 5. I hope you enjoyed this walk down memory lane, and hopefully the explanation of which cards I gave a higher rating, I evaluated, and which cards I changed my evaluation on can help you in the future. Just want to do a short little video saying goodbye to these M19 cards. I'm probably going to do a couple more drafts, videos, but it's going to be mostly focused on Guilds of Ravnica from this point on. So yeah, it was really nice going down on this walk. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to click that thumbs up and subscribe. If you have any questions, be sure to leave them in the comments section down below. But anyway, that's going to do it for this video, and I'll talk to you next time.